Are we muted?
Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting of the Hastings Planning Commission for Monday, April 5th to order. We'll begin with roll call.
Mr. Chairperson, can I make a comment real quick?
Yes.
Council, our chair people that are in the chambers here, if you're in your spots, you can lower your mask to make it easier to speak. Because one of the things in the room here you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to project. So the people on the computer can hear you. Okay. So the microphone, because first time for commission that you guys have been in here, the microphone is here by Brody. Brody Hubble, who will be helping us with our technology stuff. But the microphone here that's picked up for the people that are joining us via Zoom. Okay. Somebody doesn't have their muted and need the volume all the way down. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Roll.
Yes, if you want to go ahead and take roll while I get my volume off.
Bowers,
Here.
Brim,
I'm here, City of Hastings.
Zarnicki here, Denton, Foster, Mauer here, Resigi,
Here, City of Hastings.
Tassava,
Here, Council Chambers.
Hatfield.
Here, Council Chambers.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And we have a number of guests with us tonight, so please bear with us as we try to work through this first meeting, which is a mixture of Zoom and in person, but we appreciate you taking the time to join us. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll all join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You have all received the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? Okay. Have a motion to accept. Moved and supported to approve the agenda as distributed. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Item number 4, approval of the minutes of our March 1st, 2021 regular meeting. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Information items, we have none, so we'll move right into public hearings. The first one is a public hearing to solicit comment regarding a text amendment change to the B1 Central Business District pertaining to maximum building height. Dan, you want to introduce this?
Yes, I will, Mr. Chairman. In your packet is a staff report from Rebecca Harvey regarding the building height standards for or proposed standards. There's three options that she's made available. Two of the options would be options that would be done as a permitted use. The third option would be something the Planning Commission would look at as a special use permit with the appropriate notification and public hearing. So currently the maximum building height in the B1 Central Business District is 40 feet. That standard has been out there quite a while. There are a few buildings downtown that exceed that, but those buildings are 100 years old or older. So it's the appropriate time to look at for the Planning Commission to review the possibility of increasing the maximum building height per the three options. And with that, I can turn it over to Rebecca if she has any additional comment.
Rebecca, you're muted.
I apologize. Thank you, Dan. I don't have a lot to add. I did just want to draw a couple of distinctions for you that you obviously have already read, but just to clarify, as Dan mentioned, one option would be simply to increase the building height for non-residential buildings in the B1, and you picking whatever metric you want to replace 40 feet with. Options 2 and 3 are giving the Planning Commission the ability to consider a building taller than 40 feet, but doing so under a set of criteria that you could use so that you could consider, what the situation is around that property, rather than just flatly allowing 50, 60-foot buildings. You could say, we find it okay for this particular property because of, what is next to it. So that's why 2 and 3 give you a little bit different angle to consider. The reason there are two different options like that is because one of them, but option 2, is really just giving the Planning Commission the ability to deviate right in the zoning ordinance, saying the kinds of things that you'll consider in deviating, and it essentially keeps that within the Planning Commission's purview, but it is still just done at a board meeting. Option 3 is doing it as a special exception or special land use. And I think the biggest distinction from option 2 is that as a special land use, that requires a public hearing. So such a deviation or increase in the building height by the Planning Commission would be done in a public forum. And so I thought that might be something that the Planning Commission, found merit in. So that's the reason for 3 different approaches to that.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Commission members, any questions for either Dan or Rebecca before I open public hearing?
I do, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay.
Rebecca, I have a quick question for you. In option number 3, I noticed that you set a maximum height of 60, but in option 2, you did not. Is there a reason for that, or could you have option 3 say that the height can be increased by a special use, or do you have to give that upper limit?
Yeah, you could do no limit or a limit in either of them. You're right. Option 3 says that is suggesting there would be a limit, and option 2 does not, but you could reverse those. So by not having a limit, obviously you could consider anything, or you might prefer to have a limit. My understanding, Dan, you would have to confirm, but my understanding was that the fire department expressed no concern over increasing the building height. I don't know if they put a maximum on it, but if they did not, then really it would be up to the Planning Commission to see what they were interested in.
Yes, Rebecca, you're correct. The fire chief has no concerns about the 60-foot or or a little bit higher limitation. Their aerial truck will reach that high and considerably higher. Also, these buildings likely would be sprinkled, so there'd be an extra level of fire suppression in the building itself, which again limits the concerns and risk.
Okay, any other questions for Dan or Rebecca? If not, I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone that wishes to speak, I have no one here in the audience, but if you're on the Zoom meeting, please wave at me and give me a minute because I cannot see all of you at the same time. Okay, I do not see any indication from anyone that they want to speak.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
it's Mike Snyder in Hastings. As far as the limit is concerned, the height limit, I think if you move with option 2, it would give you the council or the planning commission a little bit of leeway, and also you bring the fire department into the equation at that time if you went with limit number 2. That's just my take on it. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Then I will declare the public hearing closed. Council, what's your pleasure?
I like option 3. But I like the verbiage that Rebecca included in option 2, that the last 3 lines of front elevation shall be superimposed on either a picture or a photograph. I like that also for option 3. Once we get to that point, and I have just a slight concern about neighboring districts. If there is a building at 60-foot height built right on the very edge, would it seem to be a tower? We have some height restrictions in our other districts as far as setbacks. So just food for thought. I don't know how to resolve that. Our business isn't that large.
Well, I guess that my thought is that, I mean, you could say the same thing on some blocks in the central business district. So doing it as a special land use lets us take all of those things into consideration, and I think we should.
Yes.
And it would be my suggestion that we use the verbiage up at the top that says we can increase the maximum height, but under a special use, not necessarily limiting to 60. Most cases we probably wouldn't go over that, but we don't know as time progresses. We start getting these buildings in that are going up to the 60 feet. Another building comes down, a new one comes in. You're gonna see things change potentially.
I would agree. I would resist having any specific number stated in there. I think that's the benefit of having it as a special use. We can take all of those factors into consideration.
Option 2.
Well, what we're basically doing is talking about option 3, which classifies it as a special use, but we're eliminating the specific maximum and leaving that open. And we're also inserting the provision that they will provide front elevation drawings that will give us a perspective on how that will fit into the neighborhood. That's option 3. Well, we're talking about option 3 with those modifications. Okay. We have a motion to that effect. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor then, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Jordan, we have your,
I said aye, yes.
okay, didn't catch that, sorry. All right, thank you very much. We will move on to item 6B, which is a public hearing to solicit comment regarding text amendment change to the keeping of animals ordinance as it pertains to chickens. Dan, want to introduce this?
Yes, I will, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the planning commission has taken, put a lot of thought and have delved hard into the issue at hand, which is a text amendment to the keeping of animals ordinance as it pertains to chickens. A lot of input, public, through a survey that was sent out near the end of the year, showed a favorable response to some type of text amendment change to the ordinance. And without reading that the proposed text amendment change to the ordinance, I want to hit on the highlights that the keeping of chickens would be allowed as an accessory use within residential zoning districts, that the keeping of chickens would be done on a non-commercial basis, solely for as a locally grown food source of consumption of meat and eggs, that there would be a minimum or a maximum number of chickens, depending upon the size of the lot, from 4 up to 6. Roosters at all times would be prohibited. The chickens would be required to be in an enclosed enclosure such as a coop. There will be design or building standards regarding those chicken coops. One of the areas that is always of concern when you move something like agricultural is the potential for mice, rats, vermin. So the language in the ordinance does speak to keeping food and other sources like that fully covered at all times. And that the enclosures would be kept neat and clean at all times to avoid any noxious odors or unsightly debris and mess. One of the other components of this is the outdoor slaughtering of chickens would be completely prohibited. This would be a permitted process that applicants would work with the city staff for permits. There would be a review, on-site review of the location for the chicken coops and enclosures, because there are setback requirements stated in the draft ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rebecca for any further comment.
Rebecca, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I did not know I did that. So all I was going to add was that I know you've seen this draft a number of times, sort of your last or final review. You just had a handful of changes. Those are reflected in the draft that's in your packet. You know, those were pretty minor. You wanted to make sure there was a statement clarifying that the chicken coop was not considered an accessory building, in that it would not be subject to the accessory building standards. That phrase has been added. You wanted to increase the heights allowed from 6 to 8 feet. That has been done. And then there was lengthy discussion on materials and sort of what that coop and run look like and what they're called. And as a result of that conversation, I restructured number 3, which is on the second page, to really just focus on the design standards of the coop and the run, and speak to the couple of things that were brought up in that conversation. So, you know, this is an attempt to give you a draft that responds to all of the questions or comments that have been raised to date. Certainly, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any additional questions, and certainly you can continue to make revisions to this if you'd like.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for either Dan or Rebecca?
The only one I have still is for fabric. The one that I still don't know if we can trust it fully is the term fabric. And I specifically raised it in the last meeting in relation to net. That's a topper for the run area that she's outlined. It would be consistent that some type of a vinyl or nylon net would be appropriate for the top, but I don't know how that is defined.
So Tom, just so you know, I went in and sort of did a deep dive on that. I do not keep chickens, so I was not speaking from experience, but I did do a lot of reading and that sort of thing. And the reason I phrased it the way I did was that based on recommended materials, they stressed that the use of some materials, not really that the community might have an issue with it, but that they were not recommended for the safety of the chickens, because the animals that can get in and get them can easily get through those materials. And they actually use the example of like netting and that sort of thing. So what you see right there is the language that was being suggested by these sources. Now, usually the planning, usually when a community is developing their language, they're really kind of doing it from an impact standpoint. But, and this continues to do that. But the reason I didn't speak specifically to the netting, which I know you're absolutely right, that was raised, was based on the recommended materials they were recommending not using.
Other questions for Dan or Rebecca? Hearing none, then I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak, please wave at me through your camera, and I'll do my best to recognize you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, Mike Snyder again. I live in the city of Hastings. I guess I do have a question. Is the floor level of the chicken coop itself going to be off the ground? And are the chickens going to be allowed to leave the chicken coop and get into a small, fenced in area around the chicken coop?
Rebecca, you want to respond?
Yeah. So on the second question, yes, they're required to have a coop, and they must be kept in a coop. They're also free to have an adjoining fenced enclosure or a run. They don't have to have a run. They do have to have a coop. But whether you have just a coop or a coop and a run, that is the only location that the chickens may be. They're not allowed to be outside of that. Even if the backyard is fenced, they can only be within the coop or the run. And that must be in the rear yard. And then instead of saying that it has to be specifically saying it must be up off the ground, it talks about the way that it has to be constructed to keep vermin from being harbored underneath. And it talks about sort of the construction quality. I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's how that's phrased to address that.
Yes, it does, and thank you for that. But I'm personally against having farm chickens in the city limits of Hastings. I lived on a farm, and I know what chickens are, and how there's a lot of upkeep on chickens, and I can't see everybody, doing the cleaning as they should. they'd leave an awful odor, as an ammonia odor, if you don't keep it clean, and how they're going to discard, the chicken waste. Is there any ordinance there to get rid of that waste, or you just can't throw it in the garbage can? So I guess I'm strongly against having farm chickens in the city limits. If they want chickens, they can always live outside the city limits, or they can get into an area where it is farm agricultural and within the city limits, and then I think it'd be okay. But that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Others wishing to speak? Number of you are not on camera, so if one of you wishes to speak, please just vocalize that.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dan King.
Yes, Dan.
I just want to make the planning commission and the public aware that we did receive one written letter from a resident that voiced support for this ordinance.
So noted. Anyone else wishing to comment? Hearing or seeing none, then I will declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
I move that we accept the text amendment changes as presented.
Is there support for that? Moved and supported. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
I believe that farm animals ought to be kept off the county or in the farm area myself. I do think they will cause a problem with stink. I think that probably by the time you're done spending $1,000 to feed chickens and what we've described, it's not really worth having 4 chickens. But that's what the people want. Who am I to say?
I think
Well, you're able to say as a planning commission.
Yes, I know.
Given
I
everything.
speak for the people.
Yes.
My biggest concern is who is gonna monitor this as far as the ordinance? I mean, it was like, tonight I come down and I was in utter shock at Bond in Michigan, there's 5 chickens running all over the yard. And in the sidewalk.
You're probably on the way down to testify.
Yeah.
I can see this happening. They aren't gonna get their permits like they supposed to. They think they can just recast it, so they're gonna have chickens. Well, who is going to oversee this?
That would be code compliance.
Hmm?
That would be code compliance, would be responsible for.
So Pratt and his group?
Oh, yeah.
I personally think that, I see chickens all over the place too, not as many as what I think is out there, but I think there's a lot of chickens out there. Having an ordinance to regulate chickens, I think would be easier for us, because what do we do now? I think if we require the people to register their chicken coops, it might be easier to control, but maybe I'm naive. I got a guy by me that chickens, and I don't know.
Yeah, the protocol, it's written into the ordinance, the safeguards. Changing the noise, odor, dust, fume, sanitation, and other health issues. And I think that one of the strongest reasons for allowing chickens is just the health factor. I mean, chickens are a clean animal, natural. Meat chickens, they're a different thing. The farm chickens that someone's referred to, those are a different species. Those are a different breed. Those are a lot messier, foul odor. the hens, the laying chickens, they're a clean animal. They keep bugs down, they provide eggs, high quality eggs, and the limits that we are proposing, 4 to a maximum of 6, the odor is being over stipulated. 6 chickens will not create the odor that you think. I mean, cats, dogs, other pets, they're gonna create more odor than 6 chickens will.
Other comments? All right, we have a motion and support on the floor. Roll call, please.
Brem,
Yes.
Zarnicki, yes. Denton,
Yes.
Mauer,
Yes.
Rezegi,
Yes.
Tassava,
Yes.
Bowers,
No,
Hatfield,
Yes.
motion carries.
Motion carries. All right, thank you very much. I do want to acknowledge the amount of work that has gone into this. Probably one of the more thoroughly researched amendments that we passed in recent times. All right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, do we have to adopt this ordinance on council, or
It needs to go on council.
will that motion take to adopt this, was it carried?
Was made to adopt it as presented.
And refer it on to city council.
Okay, yes.
All right. As you hopefully noted, item 6C has been withdrawn by the applicant, so does not need to be considered tonight. So we'll move on to item 7, whole business, JPA, JPC update. Jerry?
JPA did not meet in March. JPC had a very short meeting. They were given a recommendation by the attorney to consider reviewing their sign ordinance based on the freedom of speech rulings. The JPC has decided that seeing they just recently redid their sign ordinance, I believe it was 2019, something like that, that it was considered at that time that they didn't feel they needed to review it. So they did not move forward with that. And that was the extent of the meeting.
And our sign ordinance was taken into consideration when they did that review, so I don't think there's any reason why we should encourage them to do anything different. So, Planning Commission 2021 General Work Task List. Dan, anything you want to bring to our attention?
No, Mr. Chairman, there were no deletions or additions to this month's work task list.
Item number C, tracking report, terms and conditions imposed by the Planning Commission. Dan?
No significant changes this month either to that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We can combine items D and E, which is an update on considering changes to the accessory dwelling units or the provisions allowing two-family dwellings. Given the complexity of this issue, I appointed a committee which includes Jerry, John, the mayor, and myself, along with Dan and Rebecca, to review alternative ways that we can address this. It is definitely a complex issue, and I think that if we can consolidate our efforts to find one set of ordinances that we can work with as a package rather than dealing with it piecemeal, we will be more efficient and effective. So we have twice, had some really good discussion, and we'll continue to meet. We'll continue to keep you apprised of how we're doing. Any questions? Okay, new business. Consider setting a public hearing for our next meeting, May 3rd, to consider a text amendment to section 90-929 regarding the parking of semi-tractors, semi-trailers, or vehicles with 2 or more rear axles. Want to give us a brief synopsis of that, Dan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to make one clarification. Working through this process, the public hearing that would be set would actually speak to an addition to Chapter 90, Section 90-930. So there would be an additional section that would be added, and it would pertain to the parking of semi trucks and trailers in non-residential or commercial districts. So I did want to point that clarification out. This does clean up a few issues that we have, would also allow for some additional semi-parking in commercial or industrial areas that currently the ordinance doesn't speak directly to. There is an opportunity, or could be opportunities, for industrial district landowners to utilize their space to generate additional income for overnight or weekend parking. So that's what this public hearing will establish.
We had an inquiry from someone with property in the industrial zone area that wanted to be able to park semi-tractors there. He was noting that the city operates a similar operation on land that it owns next to the old incubator. And in researching this, we came to the conclusion the city was actually violating its own ordinance by having that semi-trailer parking there. So this will make it permissible for the city to continue to operate that, as well as to selectively allow other businesses to do something similar. Any questions?
Does this also reflect on recreational vehicles, camper trailers, 2 axles and more?
With 2 axle or more provision, it could, yes. Depending upon how we end up. Yeah, including definitions and definitions or exceptions or inclusions in the final word.
I think it could be a problem.
Well, this is not restricting, this is allowing the parking for something over 2 axles. Right now, the ordinance only allows if it's part of the business that that's on the property. You can then park vehicles with 2 or more axles there. This is creating a place to park vehicles with 2 or more axles that people could rent. It doesn't have to be part of their property. So a motorhome or a recreation with 2 or more vehicles that somebody doesn't want to park on their property, they could park it in one of these parking lots. They could rent from somebody and park in one of these parking lots. That's what this is creating.
But we're only talking about this in industrial
And
zone
commercial,
and commercial areas, not in residential.
non-residential. So it's basically creating a place that somebody could park these type of vehicles, because right now you can only park them if you're parking it on a property that the vehicle is part of that primary use of that property.
Okay. All right.
Make a motion to set a public hearing for May 3rd, 2021.
Support. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, item 8B. Consider request from Ravenna Holdings LLC for exterior design approval for their project at 600 West Woodlawn Avenue. Dan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, in February of 19, the Planning Commission approved a site plan request for Ravenna Holdings LLC. That request was extended a year later. The LLC has since built or pulled building permits and are going to be moving forward with phase one construction of the townhouse side. As a condition of approval, Planning Commission wanted to review the exterior standards as it complies with the ordinance with a 50-50 match of outside building materials, whether that be a combination of siding or stucco or cement board or something of that nature. So earlier today, actually over the weekend, Nicole Smith, who is a representative of Ravenna Holdings, sent me the elevation design drawings, and I forwarded them on to the Planning Commission this morning, and hope you all had a chance to review those. But I believe Nicole Smith is on the call. Any specific questions you could direct her way.
Hi, guys.
So, Dan, have they furnished us with the calculations showing that they do comply with the percentage requirements?
Nicole did send me an email today stating that as of right now it would be a 60-40 split. So it would be greater than the 50%. Nicole, did you want to speak to that?
I can, yes. Our goal is to keep everything as contemporary as we can with a nice aesthetic. So the entire first floor would be the stucco finish, a hardy type cement board. And then the accent pieces would also be the cement board. And then we'd also add accents of stonework or brick for the front pillars and whatnot. So it would be actually really close to 50%, probably closer to 60.
Rebecca, do these materials satisfy our requirements?
Well, possibly. So there are two questions essentially. What the ordinance does is it states the material that it has to meet. And so I think the first question before the Planning Commission is whether or not the stucco meets the ordinance requirement of decorative masonry brick or brick covering. And if it does not meet that, name of material, the Planning Commission certainly has the ability to accept it as a deviation from that material. So first question is the Planning Commission's approval of the proposed material. Secondly, the way the ordinance reads in the A1 district is that two of the building elevations, two building walls must meet that standard, with one of them required to be the front entrance. So with the elevations provided, I think clearly that meets one of those building walls in that it looks to be about a 60-40 or certainly over 50%. And so I think you can say, yes, well, it meets one of those and it is the entrance. Obviously, the two end elevations are not going to meet that standard. So in order to pick up that second wall that's required, it will have to be the rear elevation. And in that, I don't see that. I'm not able to conclude on that. But certainly if the applicant is committing to in the presentation to the board that the front elevation and the rear elevation are the same or whatever it is the presentation is, then certainly the Planning Commission has the ability to rely on what was represented by the applicant.
And is that your representation that the back elevation, the rear elevation will also meet that requirement?
Yes.
I must say, a little disappointed that the calculations were something that we had to go back and request, because that was certainly a significant part of the discussion at the time the original design was approved. And while we took it on faith at that point, there was certainly a strong indication that the presentation should have included that information.
Yeah, I apologize for that. We certainly do want to move forward and are willing to, do whatever is required to do that.
Would it be appropriate, Rebecca, if we approve this with the verification on the rear elevation being delegated to staff?
Yeah, and in fact, since you're willing to do that or interested in doing that, I think I would add to that, Dave, and ask the applicant to provide the elevations with the percentages reflected on the elevation for administrative approval. And then that way Dan can just confirm that.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Again, is there any time element when they're gonna get started?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
When are you breaking ground?
We're looking, hoping June 1st.
Thank you.
Okay, we have
I'll make a motion, we approve this under the watchful eye of anything.
with a direction to the applicant to provide a
Rear.
rear elevation with percentages shown for all 4 elevations.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would say stucco is the same as brick then.
Particularly in this case, it's a cement-based product, so.
Well, I don't quite think it's the same as brick. It don't hold up as
Well,
it should, but still it holds up for quite a few years.
yes. Okay, we have a motion and support. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay. Thank you very much. And Dan will look forward to a follow-up.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, item number 9, open public discussion and comment. Anyone? Again, show of hands if you wish to speak, or if you're not on camera, give me a vocal indication. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to item number 10, which is commission comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Lynn Denton here, and I do apologize for being late. We had a house fire. It got called in just at about 6:45, so
Oh,
had to take care of that first.
appropriately so. Glad you could join us. Any other commission comments?
Don, do you have a comment to say?
I did. I like that we're at least partially back or substantially back to face to face.
Nice to see everybody again.
Yes. I don't know what to say on this everyone, but I like this format.
Oh, but Tom, we missed you, so.
Yeah, forgot what you look like.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
Or
Moved and supported, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate everyone's attendance tonight.